Hi guys, how you doing? It's that time of the Kenny T One-on-One podcast when we bring you the moment of the week, right? Today I decided to come down to Rolisa Prestige Home. This is a subsidiary of the Rolisa Group. We're here to see what exactly they have in stock in this place here, right? It's very important for me to be here because I also want to serve as a guide to some of my friends in the diaspora that are actually doing construction back home, and also those that are local that are doing construction, because these guys have got pretty good things, as far as your construction, your home, and many other things to do with, decor, home, construction, and so much more. So let's go inside. We're going to talk to Fatima just to find out what this place is all about, and we check out what they have. Let's go. What do we have here?
Okay, so we have a variety of things. We have furniture, we have paintings, we have your kitchen sinks, your kitchen mixers, we have your basin mixers, basins, bathtubs, toilets, and so many more.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about price.
We're very affordable. We cater to all.
Why should I come to Rolisa and not go anywhere else?
Because we provide the best of the quality and durability also as well.
Okay. So those of you that are struggling with a reliable partner in as far as your building materials are concerned, you need to think of Rolisa, because obviously this is a reliable partner. They've got good quality products, and also the prices are affordable. So we'll take a walk around and just show you what this showroom looks like. Right. Hello and welcome to the Kenny T One-on-One podcast, brought to you by Yatu Tea. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our guest today is a lady who's a communications expert and also an international affairs expert. We're speaking about Maureen Nkandu, broadcaster, veteran. Maureen, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And how are you?
I am very honored to finally meet you. I think from the time I started my broadcasting journey, we've never formally met. We've never, interacted. It's an honor for me to have you on my podcast today.
I'm really delighted to be here. You've got a beautiful setup here.
Thank you.
And you guys are doing very good work.
Yeah.
Very proud of it.
Thank you.
And I love being in the studio, so I'm very happy to be here. It's my place, my kind of place.
Very well.
Yeah.
Maureen, I used to watch you on TV when I was a little boy.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not saying you're old. I'm just saying you're a legend.
I'm very young. Yeah, I get that a lot.
Yeah.
I meet people who say, I used to watch you on TV. And I say, when was that? And it's well after I'd left Zambia. So I'm thinking, what is it that makes them think they saw me on TV? Because they were probably not even born when I was on TV. But I like hearing that because it just it reminds me of what I've done.
Yeah.
And if people can remember that they saw you on TV, then that must be good.
So, I was asking our coordinator, I said, did you ever see her on TV back in the day? She was looking confused. So I went on Google and I showed her some of the old pictures that we used to see on TV. It's like, she's the one. I'm like, yes, of course, she is. Those were great days. And I remember back in the day, we only had ZNBC.
We only had ZNBC, so it meant that if you were on television, you were a superstar. Now, can you imagine just one TV station with a whole plethora of celebrities? We were big in our days.
Well, we'll talk about that. I remember that, I think around the same time we had Frank on TV and a few others. But let's speak about your early life, Maureen. Where were you born?
I was born in Lusaka at UTH on the 1st of May, 1967.
Oh, right.
I'm 58 years old.
You look younger than that.
I'd like to believe so. I feel younger, but thank you for the compliment, yes. You're
most welcome. So, your parents, I know that your father at some point opened a school which taught media and journalism, but we'll get to that a little later. So your upbringing, how many siblings did you have? Which schools did you attend?
Mm-hmm. I've got a very interesting upbringing. Interesting in the sense that I was born in a very big family. My dad was married twice before he married my mom.
Okay.
And my mom was also married before she married my dad once before. So we had this very big family, but not only that, as you may know, when we were growing up in our days, we had the extended family system. So I grew up in a very big, busy household. But essentially, I'm the eldest child between my mother and father. My dad is from Serenje, as you know. I'm absolutely proud of Serenje because I started going there when I was 2 months old.
Ushafika bakuserenje finishkachi?
Inshima, as we call it in Lala.
Inshima nishi?
Insima.
Inshima?
Yes,
Okay.
good in Shima, good food. It's home,
Okay.
basically, to answer your question. Serenje is home.
Yeah.
So if you and it's home that is different from city life. It's down to earth, it's original, it's organic, it's friendly, it's healthier, it's cleaner, it's quieter. And it's a place I started going to when I was very young, like I say, 2 months old. My dad took my mom there to spend a bit of time to understand the Lala way of life. And of course, he had to travel abroad, so he thought it was best to leave me in the village. We're from the royal family. So there was the previous chief Serenje that time. And so of course, I wouldn't have known what was going on at 2 months old. But I went there regularly after that. Almost every school holiday, we were in Serenje because it was fun. It was adventurous for us. Initially, it was very difficult. But later on, for my brother and I, it was really fun because it was a different way of life. You know, drawing water from the river, chopping firewood. For us, it was not a lifestyle. We thought it was just fun, going there to do something different from the city life. And I fell in love with it. And I've not stopped falling in love with it. So I go there quite a lot. So my dad was from there. He was Lala Bisa. So part of his mother was Bisa, his father was Lala. We are the one and the same. My mother was Tumbuka and Chewa. My grandparents from my mother's side were born in Malawi, and they settled in Mazabuka and eventually in Kalomo, and that's where my mother was born.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You would actually think that maybe they would settle like in the Eastern Province?
It's very interesting. I think it had something to do with the economy of the time.
Okay.
That was in the 1940s. And I think there was a lot of economy happening around those regions, of course, with the railway lines and the journeys towards the south of the country, of the continent. Salisbury, Harare now, South Africa, and so on. So my grandfather was a businessman. He was a tradesman, and I'd imagine that he must have settled in Kalomo. Well, he got a lot of cows and, did the usual thing that people in that area do.
Did some farming as well?
Yes, he did a bit of farming as well and businesses. So that's a little bit about my parents. So my mother's mother was Chewa. And of course, her father was Tumbuka. So I'm a mixed breed, so to say. But my ancestry from my grandfather's side is Arabic, which probably explains why my features look this way. Uh-huh. So they came from a place called Salala near Muscat, Noman. Mm-hmm. And there's a little bit of that Arabic influence in the family. Some of my uncles are Muslims and that kind of thing.
Are you Muslim yourself?
No, I'm not.
Were you ever a Muslim?
No, not really, but we've been exposed to Islam. My uncle lived with us for some time. He was a devout Muslim. He'd gone to Mecca. He did the pilgrimage. He was Alaji and so on. So we got exposed to that. But it was not very deep in the family. It was sort of an external factor. And when they visited, yes, we would have to cook food that was halal. So we'd let them slaughter the chicken. But we are predominantly, my father was initially an atheist, and then later on he became a Jehovah's Witness. Okay. My mother was a Christian, yes.
Okay, all right. So which schools did you attend?
I started school in Kenya, actually. My father went to work as an expatriate in Kenya. Mm. So in 1972, my dad previously worked for the Times of Zambia. He was news editor. Okay. And he also worked at State House with Kenneth Kaunda. You may have known that he was a freedom fighter. It's not talked about because history is spoken of those who write and speak about it. And there's a reason why he probably didn't talk about it. So in 1972, there was gravitation towards a one-party state. And my dad obviously didn't like that. And he was, there were a lot of political agitations, and he decided I have to leave the country. So he got a job abroad in Kenya as a communications expert for the All Africa Conference of Churches. So we went to live there, and I was a toddler, and that's where I started my nursery school. Okay. Yeah.
And which schools did you attend there?
Well, it was just one school. It was called Kilimani. because we lived in an area called Kilimani. It was quite upmarket. Probably is now, but of course there are a lot of nice posh suburbs that have come up in Kenya. But we lived a very good life there. And that was my first trip abroad, 1972. I was 5 years old. And it was exciting. And it also unlocked a passion in me for travel. Because I remember I packed my suitcase myself. I had my crayons, because I was already a scribe. I was a journalist at that. I had my pencil, my little coloring book and my crayons, one dress and my inner clothing. You call them underwear, but I'll be a bit polite. My inner clothing. And it was a little red case. And I always say to my children, I have been packing for this many years. For instance, now I say to them, I've been packing for 53 years. Because I've traveled for that long. Yeah, so that was the first school. Then we came back to Zambia after some time. And I've documented some of these aspects in my book. There were political connotations around our coming back and the challenges we went through. And then I went to, initially, because my dad, when we came back after some years, my dad worked for the ZIS. It was called the Zambia Information Services.
Oh, ZIS.
He was,
yes.
Okay. Yes, I think he was acting director for some time. And then, of course, because that time it was stationed in an area, you know where the Ridgeway post office is?
Yes, I do.
Yes, somewhere there. They had an office there. For those who might not know, what is now called ZANIS is an amalgamation of what was called the Zambia News Agency and the Zambia Information Services. And at some point, they merged the two. It's now called ZANIS. But Zambia Information Services was absolutely profound in terms of publishing information about what was going on in the country. They traveled around the world with the president. They captured international trips. So it was parallel to what the ZNBC was doing. And that is where my passion for broadcasting started. Because when my dad was at ZIS, he was in charge of the film. Well, he was acting director, so he was in charge of basically everything. But he used to bring along at home what was called a 16 millimeter projector. Now, that is the equivalent of some of these cameras that we have here now. Yeah. So I started my broadcasting on a 16 millimeter projector, and he would tell me, so it's this thing, it's got two reels that you then sort of, it's got a tape and you loop the tape and then you switch it on and
then it projects on the wall.
Projects on the wall. And I absolutely loved that. So he would come from a trip somewhere and he would say, come and loop it up, and I would loop it up, and he says, press the button, and I'd switch it on, and I'd feel like, I've got this. And I started liking what he did. So I went to Mumuni Primary School, which is very close to the Ridgeway Post Office. Okay. For convenience sake, because we lived at the Shorthorn Transmitters, which is down west. So my dad...
Lusaka West.
Lusaka West. So it was just easy for my dad to leave us at that school, then go to his office, and then pick us up, and then take us back home when he was going off. So after school, we'd go to his office. And then afternoon, then we'd all drive back home. So I was there briefly, and then when we moved from there, I went to Northmead Primary School.
So I wanted to ask, in Kenya, you were there from grade 1 to what grade?
I started nursery school.
Nursery from there?
Yeah, from there to grade 1. When I was about to go into grade 2, we came back here. Okay. Yeah, so I continued. There was also this thing, because I was very young, and there was a thing about not allowing you to start grade 1 unless you were 7 years old. Yeah. That was...
They were even say, no, you can talk to like this and whatnot. So if you don't...
funny things. For instance, my name is Mumbi, but we had very white teachers, especially in schools like Northmead, Lusaka Girls Primary School, and they couldn't pronounce, well, Mumbi was not hard for them. But there was this standard rule that we should have Christian names, Muzungu names. Mm-hmm. So I was given Maureen. We say Maureen in Zambia, which is an Irish name, which I got from my mom. Because it was kind of fashionable to have that Muzungu name and not your name. But essentially my name would have been Maureen Nkandu, because, that's the clan name of the Lalas, the Bembas as well. So I went to Mumuni Primary School. I think it was for about 2 or 3 months. Then went to Northmead Primary School.
Mumuni?
Mumuni, yes. It's on...
Is it?
It's still there. I visited the school the other day.
What is it about school?
Yeah, it's quite a nice little small school.
Oh, I've never heard of it.
It's a very quiet school, and I thought I need to
In
go
the
back.
Ridgeway area?
Yes, but just further down as you're going to, is it Burma Road?
Because at Ridgeway Post Office, there's a road that goes down to
Yes.
Kawata.
So
is it on that road?
On that road.
Okay, I've seen a
yes.
school there.
Yeah. So that's the school I went to. Now, the reason why that school is very significant is because having come from, that kind of lifestyle, I went to that school, and the one thing that hit me was how dirty the toilets were.
Okay.
And I wrote about it in the book, and I went back home and told my mom, and my mom said, don't ever use those toilets again. So I've had it at the back of my mind that I need to go back to that school and fix those toilets. I have to do it.
Maybe they've been fixed by now.
Maybe they have, but I can contribute to it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So so of course, for convenience sake, because we moved from Lusaka West to Olympia Park, I had to go to Northmead Primary School, which was good. And then we moved to Kabalonga, where I essentially grew up. And the nearest school was Woodlands Primary School. So I went to Woodlands for a bit, but I was really bullied by the boys.
Why?
I was smart.
Oh,
I was
okay.
cleverer than them. So they would say to me, Kuribe vo pasa number 1 this term, tikuchaya.
So
that kind of
when
thing.
you felu kila dala?
No, I wouldn't fail.
No, but they're telling you it is akuchaya, so you have to give.
So you know what used to happen those days is we used to call closing day. Closing day was the last day of the school.
Yeah.
So there was no accountability. So what the guys would do is they would gang up against you on the playfield, because the teacher would say, class dismissed, all of you go home. So we're waiting for our parents to pick us up, or we want to go home. And that's the day they would hit you. So they would find you and say, you think you're clever. You think you're the smartest. And it wasn't a serious beating. So it was like, and of course you'd cry.
But it was bullying though.
It was bullying, and we wouldn't report it because you're going on holiday, and when you come back, you've probably forgotten about it, or they'll tell you, if you report me, and on closing day, I'll hit you again. So we'd close school, and they would hit you and run away, and then you'd go home, and the terms closed. So eventually I told my mom, they used to call me nicknames because I was very fair-skinned. So they'd call me Tarino, Tomato, Fanta, and all sorts of things.
Wow.
Which normally wouldn't be offensive, but as a child,
Yeah, you don't want.
So they took me to a girls' school, and I went to Lusaka Girls Primary School because they just thought it's better. And boys also writing, like my mom would find little love letters in my bookcase from the boys. So she started getting a bit worried. I was quite young. I was not even 11 yet. So they thought, no, let's take her to a girls' school. It would be less stressful. So that's how I ended up going to Lusaka Girls Primary School till I went to secondary school.
So from Lusaka Girls, which secondary school did you go to?
I went to Leopards Hill Secondary School.
Leopards Hill.
Up the hill.
Okay.
It's changed now. It's a Catholic school. But it was a very, very good, I think it was one of the first private schools. We were always competing with the international school. We're always bragging about how good our school was. The children of who's who went there. Not that it really mattered to me. I didn't really care, but I would hear my parents say, oh, kwiskulu ya wakankala, that kind of thing. And I thought, oh, well. So that's where I spent my high school education.
I meant to ask earlier, your mother, what kind of work did she do?
Oh, my mother's a fascinating woman. In fact, my second book is about her. It should be coming out soon. My mother was, and this is a very interesting story. I'll just give you a little tidbit about my mother because this comes out in the book. So here's this absolutely beautiful woman who's born in a family of a very wealthy Tumbuka man that lives in Kalomo. And she always wanted to be educated. That was her ambition. I want to get a good education. I want to read. I want to write. And so the only way she could get a good education that time was to go to Namyanga Secondary or Namyanga School that time.
Namyanga?
In Kalomo.
In Kalomo?
Yes. Okay. And it was a boarding school. And that was her dream. So one day, my grandfather goes and picks her up from this primary school she was at. And he says to her, let's go. You pack your bags because I'm taking you to boarding school. No, she was actually in standard 6. I don't know what that is now. So she goes home and packs her bags and she's ecstatic. I'm finally going to boarding school. And then they put her in a car and drive her somewhere and he's married her off. She was 15 years old. Oh, so wow. He married us off to this wealthy man called Mr. Siadenda, who then, of course, he paid my granddad some cattle because my grandfather wanted cows. And she was absolutely livid, 15. About a year later, she had a daughter. She had 4 children from that marriage. She ran away. But I won't let it all out because it's coming out in the book. Okay. So your question, what did she do? She was semi-illiterate. She was not educated. She didn't get the education she wanted.
So she got married off at what stage of her education, you say?
Standard 6. She was, I think, about 15 or so.
Okay.
So she was...
She's pretty young.
Yeah, she was young. And I might be corrected because I need to understand these standard things. But she was quite young. And so she, after some years, she ran away and she told this story to a certain journalist who wrote about her. And that journalist was my dad. And that's how she got married to him. But so she was always very resentful. So she would say things like, would tease and say, what do you call this? And she would say it in English and would laugh. And then she would say, and she never forgave her dad for that. But she was a self-driven woman. So she started her businesses from one little sewing machine to 2. And then she had this big industrial estate. She was making uniforms for the university teaching hospitals, for nurses and doctors, for schools, for the army. She became extremely wealthy. But she would come to me and say, Nabanje bati badefwa invoice. Data dictionary. Invoice nishi. So I'd open my dictionary and check. And she'd say, Endesha, tawa ishiba. Kwena mweba sambida mwadi badalo mwe. Inengasha na disambenga sha vadalo. Mona meaning dal. No, dalo na bobubi. Because she was very smart. Very, very smart. With no education. So she would learn and she'd say, oh, quotation nifi nefi, pro forma invoice nifi, okay. And she would come home with bundles of money and she'd say, iwe pendeshi, ina iweshi. She literally educated us. She was the first woman to buy a Range Rover. I don't know if it's true in this country, but that was in the 80s. Yeah. So she became very, very powerful and successful. Self-driven.
While she was still married to your father?
Yes, while she was still married to my dad. And so that's the kind of woman she was. She was driven, she was ambitious, and she was empowered. Because she said to me, never ever you depend on a man to feed you. Never. I want you to get an education. It's okay if you have a good man who takes care of you. That's all right. But you should never, ever have to depend on a man to give you food. Never. Be industrious. Look at me. I don't ask your father for money for tomato, onion, or he's way too busy for that. Mm-hmm. I get it myself, or I grow it in the backyard. And so there are little anecdotes related to some of those things and why she told me that, but that comes out in the book. Mm. So that's the sort of person that she was. She was modern. Because when she ran away from the first marriage, she went to what was called the Welfare Society, Call Fair. And they were taught skills. And I really think that we should introduce those things in this country.
Yeah, because I remember back in the day, Call Fair, almost each town you go to,
yes,
you've got where people would go.
It was a welfare society to learn if you'd come from an abused home or a broken home. So you were taught that you couldn't, because when she ran away, she wanted to go back to school. And they told her she was too old and she had 4 children. So she went into this welfare society. She was only 22. And so they taught them skills, how to cook, how to make the bed, how to keep your house clean, how to knit, how to sew. So she came out with all those skills, which she imparted in us. So I and my siblings do all that. We can cook, we can clean, we can... So she was, even making the bed has to be made in a certain way. Cooking has to be done in a certain way. So they were prim and proper. And she was also very glamorous. She was once Miss Pepsi, I was told, that probably before I was born or something like that. So that's the kind of person she was. And I think a lot of that had an influence and an impact on my life and who I eventually turned out to be.
Okay, so Maureen, after your secondary education, what happened next?
So when I finished high school, so when I was at Leopards Hill Secondary School, I was a member of the debate club. I was the chairperson. I absolutely loved English and English literature. I spoke on behalf of the school when we had events. I was the spokesperson or the PR, whatever you want to call it. And it was already determined by then that I was headed that way. Even when I was younger, I used to report on my siblings. They used to call me reporter. Yeah, we had career days. And they said to me, now this is a very interesting story. So they would come to talk to us about careers. And by the age of 7, I'd already decided I was going to be in journalism and broadcasting. I had already decided that. And so when I was at high school, I was doing those kind of things.
It's very interesting because a lot of the kids when they're young, around that time, today you ask them what you want to be, they tell you this, tomorrow very few will be set on one thing that they think they want to do.
No, I was very set on that. I knew it. And they would giggle. My friends would be like, because in fact, how that started, I'm a storyteller, so I'll tell you this.
Let's hear it.
So in can't remember, I think it was 77, my mom had a major operation in Ndola. And my dad was going back and forth to see her because she was hospitalized. On his way back, he had a very bad accident and he nearly died. So when he got out of hospital, my mother was still in hospital. He came home and he thought he was going to die. So he called us all and he said, my children, I want to bless you before I die. And so we were all like, oh gosh, what's going on? We were a bit young. And by then I had already, of course, known what I wanted to be. But anyway, he called us and one by one would go forward and kneel before him and he would tell us. So he said to my sister, you're going to be in education, you're an educationist and you're going to be a professor. Then he went to my brother and said, you're going to be a medical doctor. And then he came to me and said, you're going to be a TV star. And I got so excited. I didn't really understand what a TV star was. He didn't say journalist or broadcast. He just said, he laid his hand on me and said, you're going to be a TV star. And so whenever I went to school and people said, what do you want to be? I'd say, I want to be a TV star. And of course, people would giggle. Who do you think you are? TV star, And I knew I would be. And so when I left secondary school, the idea was for me to go to university because my dad had lived and worked in Germany. So he'd arranged for me to go and study in Berlin, to study linguistics, because I am still very good at languages. So he thought, as part of your broadcasting career, study linguistics, because it just helps you to speak better, to understand, and the whole science of it. But because there were a few challenges, my parents didn't have enough money to take me to university. While I was waiting to go to Berlin, my dad said, let me take you to University of Zambia, Institute of Mass Communications. And, if it doesn't work out, you can stay at Yunza. So I went to Yunza and I sat in that class and I looked at everyone and a lot of what was being taught was theory. And I said, this is not for me. I want to be a TV star. I'm not sitting in this class. So after 1 month, I quit. And I didn't tell my dad I'd quit. So he found out eventually. He said, iwe, nishuwarekele skulu. Wamuna nomba chitaule yaku Germany. Chala bashani. I said, chitefoku yako kuyunza ino. Defo afyo kupapa TV. He says, tuye ku ZN. That time it was called ZBS. Tuye konga tawasambirila. Wakwatafika certificate ka high school GC, it was called GCE O level that time. Tabaka kupede nchitokulia. Go to Yunza. I said, no, I'm not going there. It's boring. And I know more stuff than most of these people.
So what kind of stuff was going on in that school?
It was really just put you? Good stuff. Huh? They were teaching us the basics of communications and journalism. But I'm this fired up teenager who just thinks this is really boring. I'm not doing this. So he then took me to the Evelyn Horn College. And he says, this is more practical, put me in a journalism class. There were people like Ben Kangwa, those guys like Fred Mshimbalume and others who are now late. And of course, it was fun for me because I was looking at all these people from TV and thinking, wow.
They were already on TV.
They were already on TV. So some would work and then go and study. And I was looking at these TV presenters and thinking, I really like it here. I'm in the same class with TV personalities. But then again, after a short while, I just said, nah, you know what? I'm quitting this. I don't like it. This is not what I want to do. Yeah. So
you guys paved the way for us. I went to Evelyn Horn College for my journalism.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
My dad had taught there years earlier, but then he took me there to go. So it was easy for him to get me enrolled there.
Yeah.
But that's not what I wanted to do, because you remember at 7, I knew exactly what I wanted out of my life.
Because at the time, I don't even think the radio station was operational. Because when I was there, isn't it? Because there's Horn FM now.
No, it was,
there wasn't
no
anything,
no,
right?
No, but they were training them, and they were doing industrial attachment at different, well, at the Times of Zambia, Daily Mail, TV, and then eventually the Post newspaper. So what I did then was I secretly quit, and then I'll tell my parents in the morning, now to school. And then one day I decided now I So I got off the bus.
It was very common, huh?
Yeah, and you'd get the job. So I got up and secretly, I didn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
I just said, Nayaku Library Lelo. I went to ZBS that time. They said, what do you want? You know, we had soldiers at the gate back then. And
it wasn't easy to have access to that facility.
No, it was not. It was well structured, and the security was quite tight. Well, probably is the same now. And I said, I've come to see the HR manager. And they said, you have an appointment? I said, yes. I lied.
Yeah.
So I got in, they let me in, and there was this HR manager, and I went to him, and he says, younger lady, how can I help you? I said, I want a job. And he said, what job? I said, I want to be on TV. And I was petite. I had school shoes and socks. And he looked at me and he said, are you not a grade 7 dropout? I said, no, I'm not a grade 7 dropout. I'm Form 5. Those days we used to call it Form 5, and I've got my certificate. He looked at it, he said, but you can't get a job here. Look at all these people here. They're educated. They've been to college. They've been to university.
Similar thing that your father told you.
Exactly. And I just thought, this guy's joking. I was very upset. I went back home and I cried. 2 months later, I went back. And I went to see him again, and he said, I told you we don't employ grade 7 dropouts here. Go home. Next time you come here, we'll tell the soldiers to arrest you. Of course, they were not going to do that.
Of course, yeah.
I went back, and you know, one thing that I used to do, because I had it in my psyche that I was going to be on TV, I practiced every day. I'd sit in front of the mirror and pretend I was reading the news. I would dress up, and I would rehearse and practice, and I was into it even before I got into it. So the third time, after a while, I thought, okay, if I see the HR manager, he won't give me the job. So who do I see? I have to see somebody who's in charge of TV. So I went there, and they let me in, and I said, I've got an appointment with, then they said, I said, the guy on TV, the guy in charge of TV. They said, oh, Mr. Mando. I said, yes, that man.
Charles Mando.
Yeah, I said, that man. I lied.
Yeah.
They took me to Mr. Mando's office. He said, oh, lady, what can you do? What do you want here? I said, I want a job on TV. He says, oh, what qualifications do you have? And this time I didn't wear school shoes and stuff. I looked the part, but I was very small. Yeah. And so they said, okay, today we are doing auditions, because I already had a reputation, that little girl who always keeps coming here. So I heard him saying, he called someone and said, take this kid to the studio. Just give her an audition. She'll be so happy. Let her go home. We'll tell her she failed the audition, and then she'll never bother us again. So there were all these, so we had to sit outside the office, and there were these young ladies from Evelyn Horn College and University of Zambia, Mindolo, and a few guys.
So you never heard about the auditions at all? It was just a coincidence.
I had no clue what an audition was. And it was a coincidence, God's way, when God paves the way for you. So I get in there, and I'm seated next to these people, and they look at me and say, what are you here for? And I said, I'm doing an audition. They said, where did you study? And I told them, Leopards Hill Secondary School. They said, what is that? I said, secondary school, and they laughed. They really laughed. They said, oh, you went to Leopards? Have you been to college? I said, no. You know what happened? They were auditioned, they took me into the studio, and I was a kid, and they said, you know, you look in front of that thing, you see that camera there? We'll count down from 3, 2, 1. When we do this, you start talking. And they gave me a script, and I went through it. And they counted 3, 2, 1, and I started talking, and they almost fell off their chairs. They were like, what? The long and short of it is that I got the job. and maybe 1 or 2 other people of those 8 people that were there for auditions. So anyway, so this lady, the technician in the VTR room, we used to call it the VTR room, we used to play tapes, videotape.
I remember.
Yeah. So she runs to go and call the Mr. Mando and others. Come and see this kid. So they said, there's a kid we're auditioning, just come and check her out. So they come in and say, kiddo, they were calling me kiddo, can you read that script again? So I'm thinking, oh gosh, I must have been terrible. Okay, now I'll give it my best. So they're watching from the other side and they say, 3, 2, 1, cut. And I went for it. And they're like, have you been on TV before? I said, no. Have you done this before? I said, no. They said, okay, go home. And I thought, oh, was I terrible? And I went back home. That was on a Friday. I'll never forget that day because it was just before Christmas. And then when I was at home, they said, oh, give us your number or how can we get in touch with you? Or address, we'll write to you. Because those days they would either write a letter to you or phone you if you had a number at home. We had landlines. So I gave them my telephone number and I was playing about, just feeling so good that but
it was a secret. And you're in the studio,
Nobody at home knew about it.
Yeah.
So the phone rings and it was in my dad's study. So I ran to the study and the only person that got phone calls was my mom or my dad. Those are the only 2 people that got phone. So I went to answer the phone and they said, now speak to Maureen. They said, Maureen Nkandu. I'm thinking, me, who's calling me? I'd forgotten. I said, my gosh, who's calling me? So I said, this is me. And it was this is Mr. Mando. Kid, I want to tell you, you've got the job. When can you start?
Wow.
I was like, what job? They said, you've got the job at ZBS. We want you to come. We'll train you. Can you come? I said, okay, when should I come? They said, come on Monday. And now I'm thinking, how do I tell my parents I quit Evelyn Home and I've got a job? Because they told me, So now how am I going to tell them? So I said, I won't tell them. I told them, Nakula library these days, because the college was closed. Went, ZBS, they took me to HR, got my NRC, I was employed. Wow. Then they said, of course, those days you would not go on TV.
On TV, yeah. You had to.
Under no circumstance would you. You'd have to be trained for 6 months. And the training would be camera. What is to tilt? What is crab? What is tilt up? What is track? You had to know how the studio camera worked. You had to understand how the microphone worked. What was a radio mic? You went through the grill of it before they would put you in front of cameras. You'd have the proper training. So my title was operations assistant. But then they let me do schools broadcasts on radio. You know, we used to have an education broadcast where you'd read out stuff that schools would follow. And I was there with Mansi Chalwe, the late Mansi Chalwe, and he would train me and, you know, presentation, this is how it sounds. And they would get the bigger, more experienced journalists, broadcasters to train you. So you'd shadow them in the studio. You'd go there and sit and listen and watch what you observe. So you learned by training, hands-on, but also through observation. So through those broadcasts, one day my mom says, you know, there's a girl on radio I hear on schools broadcasts. Because that's what they call me at home. And I'm like, oh gosh, they'll never. I don't know. I was scared.
Yeah.
I was 17, 18 years old.
Yeah, yeah. And the fact that they didn't even know that you went back.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now it was time. So for me, they said we'll train you for 6 months, but they found that within 2 months, I was ready to go on air as a continuity announcer. So they said, okay, tomorrow is your big day. You're going to you'll be a continuity announcer. And I'm thinking, good gosh, how do I tell my parents?
So you didn't start off with the news, no. You started off with what they used to do, coming up at 19 hours is this, 20 hours this.
News was, you won't go near that studio. They'll arrest you. It was the preserve of the broadcasters, the best of the best. Ben wasn't even reading news, but it was Mansi Chalwe and Harold Wesa and who else was Peter Mwemba, the very seasoned. Those were BBC trained, Deutsche Welle trained newsreaders. There's no way I'd have got near there.
Yeah.
I was to start as a continuity presenter, continuity announcer. And but before then, I used to do, we didn't have digital captions and what you call these character generators. So you'd have a cue card in front of a camera, and then they would say, Zambia Broadcasting Services, this is Television Zambia broadcasting from Lusaka. So that was what we call the sting these days, the interlude before.
Yeah.
The time now is da-di-da-di-da. So I started with that. And then my mother again said, oh, that voice sounds like someone I know. So anyway, it's the day for me to go on TV. And I go to the person who was in charge of scheduling on TV. And I say, can you phone my dad? And they said, why? I said, tell him I'm going to be on TV. I said, why? You didn't tell him? I said, no. Why not? I said, I didn't tell him I work here. They're like, you have been coming here for 2 months? You didn't tell your dad? I said, tell him, and please tell him not to beat me. So it was Mr. Daka, I think. So he called, they said, give me the number. So they called the Evelyn Horn College number. They couldn't get through. I'm thinking, what am I going to do? 5 o'clock. I have to go on air.
Because you didn't want to shock them with just being, because they're going to watch you at some point.
Yes,
yeah.
Because 17 hours, my family would be glued to TV, especially my siblings. When TV is starting with cartoons and all, they were going to see me there. And so I said, what am I going to do? I said, can you try phoning home? That was like now going to 4 o'clock.
And you're supposed to go on air at what time?
17 hours, live. So they called home, and lo and behold, my dad was there. And Mr. Mando called, hello, Mr. Nkandu. Because, of course, my dad was in the field. They knew each other. Said, Mr. Nkandu, I have a little surprise for you. Your daughter has been very naughty. And my dad's thinking, oh, what has she done now? She says, oh, she works with us now. We've given her a job. My father said, what? And she's going on air now at 5 o'clock. So my father didn't know how to react. I don't know how he reacted because I was not there. So anyway, so I go on. And that, because I had to work until midnight, till close down, epilogue and national anthem. And I'm thinking, I don't want to go home. I'm going to get a beating today from my mom. My dad didn't normally. I don't know what they'll say to me. I'll get a real spanking for this. And they were waiting for me, and they're thinking, what are they going to say? And my mom gave me a big hug, and everybody was like, Twachkumana pa TV.
First of all, it's a ZBS car that dropped you home, right?
Yes. Twachkumana pa TV. Nishtawala and it was all forgotten. And that's how I started. So after some time, I did mostly continuity. They decided to invest in me. The organization thought she's an asset. And ZNBC did that a lot. They would identify your talents. They find out where your area of expertise is. I'm assuming they still do that now. And then they take you and have you trained in that field. And they knew I was on-air talent. And I also did a bit of radio DJing. And I started gaining popularity because for a long time on Zambia, what was it called? General Service. We were playing a lot of, I was a teenager and the music was not teenage kind of music. So I cut across that audience. And so I'd get boxes and boxes of fan mail, people writing to me and so on and so forth. So there was this excitement about this young girl who's very different. She looks different. She sounds different. I was absolutely eloquent, totally glamorous. Because I always believed that my father always said, you've got to look good. Looking good, dressing well gives you the confidence. So it was a big sensation. And so one day, the newsreader didn't show up. And, news was watched by the president, by the ministers, by the diplomatic community, by everyone. So it was serious business back then. These days, you'd switch to flip through one channel to another. So then I'm on continuity duty and they're trying to call this person. No, I can't make it. It's 15 minutes to news time. They say, let's just try this kid.
You don't have a choice. Because they would rather risk putting a presenter who's not very good than not have the news at all.
Because they tried to get 1 or 2 of the managers and they said, no, these guys can't read news. And someone said the other one, the president doesn't like him, so we can't. Those days you had to be like, So they said, kiddo, I don't know, that became my name. They used to call me young Maureen. Can you read the news? I said, yeah. Are you sure? I said, I can read the news. For me, it was so in my DNA. could not understand what the fuss was all about.
Did anybody do any form of journalism broadcasting before your father?
My grandfather
Okay.
was a broadcaster because he was a Jehovah's Witness. So he used to be what they used to call Bakabilo. He would go into the townships, not formal broadcasting as we know it, in the villages rather, not the townships, to announce and to broadcast to the villagers about, the Bible and so on. He translated the Bible into Lala and different languages. So he had a taste of that broadcasting. And then there were some broadcasts that were recorded in 1952, 1950. So he was already in that. So maybe it's genetic.
Yeah.
So
generation.
Yeah, so they took me to the studio and they said, you have a jacket. I was dressed not too badly because you had to be dressed in a certain way. And I read the news and that's where it started. And they said, well, we have to send her to school. She has to go and train. So they sent me to India through a scholarship from the Indian government. And I went and did my diploma there. Remember, I'd started work with a Form 5 GCSE certificate. So I did a diploma there for some years and came back and I was a seasoned news anchor. And so that's how that's the story of my ZNBC life. But it was not easy.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask, Maureen, something that everyone spoke about, other than how great you are, how great you were in broadcasting, your newscasting, your continuity presentation, you were a very beautiful young lady, right?
I still am.
How then? You still are, yeah. But at that time you're young, you were, how did you navigate through your career? Because everybody was watching you.
It was very difficult. It was extremely difficult. I got calls from women who were threatening to beat me up.
What?
Over men I had no clue about. Somebody went to see the director general and said, you have to fire her. She's having an affair with my husband. I had no clue who that was. When I finished reading the news at 19:30, those days news was 30 minutes, I would go over to the newsroom to get the bulletin to read the radio news at 8. The security at the gate would phone the control room and say, tell her not to come out. There are about 3 or 4 cars here, all of them waiting to pick her up.
Ooh.
And I had no idea who those guys were. It was extremely difficult for me. Because I got marriage proposals. I got guys claiming I was dating them. I got all sorts of, not only outside the organization, but within the organization as well. The sexual harassment was so intense. In fact, that was one of the reasons why I had to leave. It was absolutely difficult.
Wow.
It was not easy. Remember, it's only one TV station.
The whole country is watching.
There's a huge age gap between me and the others who were there, like 10 or 15 years or so. And they want you. These guys, you guys are vicious.
Are we?
You guys don't joke when you want someone. And so I'd get gifts from people I've never met. I get into the office in the afternoons when I'd go to read, and there's something on my desk. And it's brand new wristwatch and perfumes. And I look at this, where is this from? And I don't even know. And then some people within the organization saying, tukakoma kaichaka. I'm like, what is wrong with you people? And I was cheeky, I was very, you're a teenager, you're naive, you fight back. Because at some point, my mom said, you're an employee like the rest of them. Don't let them call. Because I used to run. I was very happy to have the job. They would say to me, Mwache, kashiteko Coca-Cola na mapai ko canteen. And I'll take the basket and run and go. But I was so happy to have the job. And my mom said, don't do that. You're their equal. Why are they sending you to the canteen? Don't they have someone to do it? So I started becoming quite confident. And the first few days, because I had no clue what it meant to be on TV. I just wanted to be. I didn't know that it meant fame. So I'd go home crying. And my mom would say, but you signed up for it. People watch you. And I said, I can't do this job. I'm going to quit.
How easy was it to actually make a decision to say, okay, this one can be my boyfriend at the time? Because you had thousands of men wanting you.
Yeah, I think that it was not easy. Because some of them were not most of them were not my taste. Older men with big bellies and,
Yeah.
they were not fun. Some of them were like, when you're that age, that one doesn't speak. Remember, I went to private school.
Yeah.
I went to the same school as Simon Mwewa,
Okay.
Lane, whatever.
Ah.
We had that level of English. You had to speak properly.
Yeah.
You had to be prim and proper. And some of them were like, oh, who does this guy think he is? So someone said, Mwaiche, ule sleta fetwali awan for Mwaiche.
Ngabakupela.
Waleta twali ya ifwe.
Yeah.
So some of the older ladies at the TV station would say, Mwaiche, tie palusaka club. And I'd go there. And the guys would say, fish mlefwa, poloni, ama chips, fish. And they would buy for them. So how easy was it? It was probably easy because I was thinking, I'm still young. I don't want any of these guys. And my focus was just the job.
Just the job, yeah.
And I'd never had a boyfriend in my life. Ever. I met my first boyfriend when I was 18, going to 19.
Were you still at ZNBC?
Yes.
Okay. You had started already?
I'd started, yes. I met my boyfriend when I was at ZNBC.
How did you meet?
It's the footballer. So, yeah.
Okay.
We met and things started and we liked each other and so on. But, yeah, so I liked him.
Who's this footballer? We have many footballers.
Kalusha.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted you to say it because I remember, I wanted her to say it. So I remember, obviously, everyone was following what was happening. And, we heard a story that, oh, no, she's actually dating Great Kalu. So like, okay, they're a celebrity couple in a way also.
Yeah, it was fun. It was good while it lasted. I think that if you read my book, I've written the details of how we met and how we started until it ended. And I prefer to leave it there because sometimes my children don't feel very comfortable, especially my daughter. We have a daughter together. And sometimes I just feel out of respect for him and for my daughter, my children, I do not talk about it publicly. Okay. Yeah.
Great. So then after your relationship ended, what happened?
Well, I continued with my ZNBC. It was very hard. It was devastating. Remember, I'd never had a boyfriend before and it ended and there was ridicule and all sorts of things. But my dad said to me, you know what? You've got intellectual power. You're young. You've got the looks. Get on with your life. Pick it up. Your child's, big enough for you to go back to work. And I just carried on. He said,
so you never got married at all?
I got married later. Or with Kalusha. No, we got engaged. Okay. And I went to live with him in Belgium for some time when he was playing football in Belgium.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but then when you went to Belgium, you quit your job or you went on leave?
I quit my job.
Okay.
Yeah, because he said he was going to help me get into school and so on and so forth. And then the baby came. So ZNBC was very happy to have me back. So what happened was when I came back, I was at home for some time. I didn't have a job and I had a baby and I'd been dumped. And my dad said to me, you are damn talented. You're not going to sit at home and cry for a man. Because I was crying every day. Yeah? And so he said, go back to ZNBC and see if they can take you back. And I walked there and the director general looked at me and said, are you back? I said, I'm back. What time do you start work? I said, today. He said, go home and change. We've missed you.
Yeah.
I went home and changed and the phone did not stop ringing in the control room. The country just went ballistic.
The country was happy to have you back.
Yes. Yeah. And so my father said, that's where you belong, not in a man's house. Go back there and do your job. And I went back there and it was absolutely good. Because I was well respected. I did things that I liked. Of course, it was very difficult. There's a lot of envy and jealousy and sabotage. And people would come in and steal my contacts and people would backstab me. People went to see ministers to tell them, Minister of Information to say, tell the DG to remove her from the news desk. At some point, they even sent me to the commercial department at the request of one woman who wanted to be the one reading. So all sorts of things happened. And in the process of that, I was headhunted by Bob TV. That was in 1992, going to 93. Bophuthatswana at that time was a homeland if you understood the apartheid system that time, they had all these what they called Bantustans, which were sort of semi-autonomous areas which were seemingly working for black people, because apartheid, South Africa wanted to show that black people could self-govern, but they're still attached to the South African government. So my father said, that's politically sensitive. This country has housed the ANC, and we have been at the frontline state. You can't go and work in a homeland. How is it going to be perceived? And so I had a lot of friends here in Zambia from the ANC who were exiles, because remember, to counter the propaganda of the African National Congress, we had a radio station. We had given them a channel, a platform at ZNBC called Radio Freedom, which is now Channel Africa in South Africa, where they also used to counter that propaganda. So they would broadcast about the liberation movement. So I made a lot of friends among them. And they say to me, no, go to Bob, tell us what's happening, So I went to Bob. And
where was that?
Bob, it was in the northwest of South Africa. It's now SABC.
Okay.
It was called Bob TV that time, but it's SABC Bob. But it was the most functioning place in terms of black people. There were expatriates from all over the world. They wanted to show that South Africa was thriving. And that's where the resentment towards foreigners in South Africa didn't start now. It started back then, because they used to hire the cream of the crop from Zimbabwe TV, Nigeria, and everywhere else, teachers in universities, to show that South Africa was attractive, and they would give us good jobs and they'd pay us well. So I went to Bob TV. I remember I walked in there because, of course, they wanted me for the job, and they'd interviewed me prior, and I walked in there and I was drop dead glamorous. And they said, TV. There's a program called Panorama, and I became a presenter of Panorama. And within the first year, I got a broadcasting award for it as the best TV personality. But I had to leave Bob because things were getting tense. And 2 weeks after I left Bophuthatswana, hell broke loose. And I'd gone to Europe to study.
Okay.
So
which part of Europe did you?
I'd been to Holland when I was still with ZNBC. They called me back to go and study radio, and because they wanted to train me to be a trainer. So I went to Hilversum at the Radio Netherlands in 1994 and did my training there. And after I trained there, while I was training, I was also doing freelance work for the Radio Netherlands International. And I did some freelance work there for the last half, because the course was 6 months. So January to June. And then from June, I worked for them part-time. And then I decided to go and study. I went to university. They said to me, I enrolled for a bachelor's degree. And they said to me at the University of Wales, and they said, you've got broadcasting experience. You've got a very good higher level diploma. Why don't you just do a master's degree? And I said, really? And they said, yes. So I enrolled for a master's degree. So I went and studied there. When I finished my studies, I went to South Africa. I was guest presenter on Mnet. But I just said, after, my studies were so profound. There was a strong element of international relations. And I thought, I'm not just going to be a glamour girl on TV again. I want profound stuff. So I was a field reporter on Carte Blanche, while I was also doing public relations. And then while I was doing Carte Blanche, SABC noticed me, and they said, you can't be doing Carte Blanche. It's a weekly program. Come on over. So I went to the SABC. Yeah, I was pregnant with my son, and I had pimples on my face, and I walked in there and I said, I'm so ugly, I can't be on TV. When are you due? I said, in a few months. They said, okay, we'll give you the 6 o'clock news, then we'll talk after that. So after my son was born, I went back after maternity leave, and I said, listen to me and listen very carefully. This is now 1996. South Africa has transformed. Mandela is president. South Africa is now in a position to tell the best story. SABC is the biggest, largest, well-resourced broadcaster in the Southern Hemisphere. We have to tell the African story. Let's set up SABC International. Actually, that time I called it SABC Africa. Let us broadcast. Let's counter what CNN and BBC and others are telling. Let's tell it from an African perspective. And they liked that idea. And so they gave me the job. They changed my job title. First, they made me CEO of SABC Africa. And, you know, the labor unions in South Africa are very difficult. You can't have a foreigner. So they changed it. They said, look, we'll pay you the same thing. We'll give you the best pecs. We'll call you Chief International Correspondent. And I had a carte blanche. I traveled the length and breadth of Africa. When I was not traveling, I was reading African news. I was reading the news. I went all over the world. And I think that was the best part of my broadcasting career. I think I enjoyed SABC more than I did BBC because I got fully cooked as a journalist.
Yeah.
And it was while I was working for the SABC that BBC then also headhunted me and offered me a job. And I liked it. Who says no to the BBC? So I was happy to move to London.
Now, Maureen, I know that in your career as a journalist, you had situations where you had to go and report in places where there was war. And I hear that there was a time that you and your crew were abducted.
Yeah,
in other countries. Can you tell that story?
Yes. I've told it many times. We were arrested many times. You know, it was very dangerous to report. You know, when you're reporting, and I don't like saying you know because I was trained not to say you know, but you see, the thing for me was first it was difficult because I was married. I was a mother of young children, so I was a wife, and I had this career. And this was a career that was taking me away from home into dangerous terrain. Now, you don't just get up and say, oh, where are we going? Where is the war? And gang-ho nonsense like that. You have to know your stuff. You've got to have your networks. You've got to have plan A, plan B, plan C. If this happens, how do we get out? Who do we contact? What's the exit strategy? So know what you're doing. And because my dad previously had covered DRC extensively, I had followed the story he was in Congo when Lumumba was killed and so on. So I had been following the story and I said, I'll give it a try. But you see, what spurred it for me was when I came back from maternity leave and we had our editorial meeting, and my editor-in-chief, great man, Alistair Sparks, is late now, one of the best journalists South Africa had. Him and others in the room were there. And I said, I want to go to the DRC. Something is happening there. I think Mobutu is going to be kicked out. The intelligence that we have from different sources is that he's ailing, and there's a rebellion starting in the east, which is possibly being supported by Rwanda and Uganda and other part. But Mobutu is going. So let's put this story on our radar. You know, the sort of things you discuss in your planning desk in editorial newsrooms. And they said, okay, good idea. And then they looked around and said, who's going? And they were looking at the men and I said, no, you're not. I'm going. I'm going.
They were thinking, no, the lady shouldn't go.
Yeah. I said,
it's not tough enough.
They didn't say it, but they just looked around the room and said, so which one? I said, nah, I'm going. It's my story. And they said, but you've just had I not just had it. The baby was a bit bigger. I was going to look after the baby. I said, his father, I'm going. If you had a baby at home, your wife would look after the baby, right? I am going to the DRC. Do you know the DRC? Can you go? But you can't go to war. The guys, you break your nails and you think those rebels they'll eat you alive. I said, let them try. At least I'll die trying. And so they let me go. And I went there. And what was the big story that we wanted? We wanted to get hold of Kabila that time. He was a rebel leader. Remember, there were a lot of rebels in the east, in Goma. Mm-hmm. So you have to speak to a lot of people before you go there. To embassies, to institutes for security studies, to your other sources and networks. Because you're plunging into an area where there's a rebellion. And the whole world was looking for Kabila. Who is Laurent Désiré Kabila? And I thought, if I get this guy, then I'm a real journalist. And I just said, I'll pray. And so I went with the crew. Of course, you have to be trained. How do you survive in a war zone? How do you dodge bullets? Things like that. They train you in all that stuff. This is your bulletproof vest. If you're in trouble, here's a satellite phone. Remember, rebels like satellite phones, or the soldiers, they'll take it. So you go through that grill. And we went. And somebody hinted that Kabila would be in a certain place. And I thought, oh my goodness. And all the other journalists, there was Reuters and AFP, they were chasing a particular story.
So you were with SABC at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
And I said, I'm getting this. We had to pay bribes as well to our news sources. I said, if I get Kabila, I'm giving you this amount of money. So shush your mouth. Don't tell any other journalist. So I got him. I walked up to him and he looked at me because we had asked for an interview. And he's seated there and I walk up to him and he looked at me and he says to me, hello, my sister, where are you from? Are you South African? I said, no, I'm Zambian. Ah, Zambian, Mulishani. And we started talking and first he said, no, but I'm busy, my sister. I just wanted to greet you. I said, no, please, we want just 5 minutes of your time. And then it led to that. And then he said to me, he took us to his sort of makeshift office and he said, you're very beautiful. I'll marry you. I said, yes. I'll marry you also. I'll marry you, because I wanted the interview.
Yeah.
Of course I wasn't. He told me he had lived in Ndola. We got the scoop. And my goodness, were the others livid. And I mean, other international media, like, who? SABC? Who do they think? But anyway, the day we were arrested was the other time when I'd gone to DRC. Kabila was president that time. And there was a different rebellion cooking again from the east to take Kabila out. Uh-huh. And so, because it was coming from the east, the people of that area are called Banyamulenge. And they had these are of Tutsi, well, people say they're of Tutsi or Rwandese origin, but these are Congolese who've lived there for many years because of the wars, and very long story. But short of it was, the story was that Kabila's government was killing them, or soldiers were killing them. And I had to go and tell that story, but also to interview Kabila the second time, because remember, I'd interviewed him when he was a rebel.
Yes.
So we get in there through the Minister of Information. He's very supportive. He gives us a letter. If the police stop you, this is the letter. The usual things journalists do. So I say while we're waiting for the interview, to my camera person, let's just film the life. Let's go to the market. Let's speak to people and so on and so forth. Get the story. And then as we were filming, here are the soldiers. They get hold of these guys who are walking. Wewe ni mtusi wewe. Wewe mtusi kuja hapa. And they start beating these guys and beating them. And I said to Victor, the camera guy, I just looked at him. I said, Victor, that's a story. And he turns on his camera and he moves away. And then they saw us. They said, in Lingala, you want to film? You've seen us? They knew we were filming. Okay, come. They took the guys. There was a little sort of like, what do you call it? Like a little river, stream. So they throw the guys over the stream and they say, bring your cameras. And I'm like, I can't film this. They said, bring. You want to film? And they said, switch on your cameras. And then they just went, they shot those guys.
Shot the guys in the street?
Yeah, they shot them and the guys died. And we got that picture and I said, gosh, I can't deal with this. And then I said, what do we do? I called the office. I said, I just witnessed something horrific. They said, well, you wanted to go there. Send the footage and we'll see. And they used it and it went around the world and so on. And the time they arrested us, because we became notorious, the police would find us. We've got this permit to film. They would lock us up, throw us in the cells maybe. We'd pay a bribe. Evening, they let us go. Now, this particular day, there was a rule in Congo that when the presidential motorcade is passing, no one moves. If you're driving, you park your car on the side, get out and stand at attention.
Wow.
Don't fidget, don't move, because they'll shoot you, because they'll think you're trying to assassinate him. So we were filming and his motorcade happened to be passing. He was coming from, I think, the funeral of Pepe Calais. And so there was an unsuspecting guy coming from a dust road on the side paths. So the soldiers stopped him and said, can you not see that the presidential motorcade was passing? And the guy said, no, I didn't see. And so they pounced on him, the soldiers, the beret rouge, the red beret, vicious guys. They started beating him up. And we had a camera like somewhere there. And I just say to Victor, this is it. We have to take this one.
Why don't you record it?
Yeah. So what Victor did is he walked to his camera and switched it on and walked away. like he was not recording. And he went and stood somewhere else there. And, we pretended we were just sort of watching. So after he finished, the guy stopped beating that guy. They let him go. He was badly beaten, bleeding everywhere. So Victor walks to the camera quickly, steadily, and pretends he doesn't want to be seen that he was filming, and he switches it off. Then this guy, the commandant, they were calling him, he comes, he says, come here. You were recording us? We said, no. Victor quickly rewinds the tape in the machine. Because remember, we had been filming the market and everything, and this guy is asking me, were you filming? I said, no, I was speaking in French. No, we're not filming. So he rewinds the tape quickly because he's suspecting this guy will say, let me see your tape. It was a 30-minute tape. So he says, I want to see your tape. Switch on the camera. So Victor switches on the camera and he's just seeing. And I'm thinking, after 5 minutes, he'll get tired and he'll let us go. No. He watched the tape till he got to the point where they were beating the guys. And he says, you're done. You're under arrest. You're spies. Wow. I want to our South Africa. These people are spies.
Oh.
So they handcuffed us. And they put us.
So this guy watched 30 minutes.
It was like 25 minutes of it because the tape had not ended.
Still too long.
Yeah. He stood there and watched with his soldiers. He was not going to leave. And so we were in trouble. They said we were spies. Why were we filming that information? And they said, you're getting into this army truck. And I said, I'm not going in that truck. We're going to handcuff you. I said, you're not handcuffing me. And so Victor was more mature. He negotiated. He said, okay, where do you want to take us? They said, we're taking you to the army headquarters. This is espionage.
Oh.
I said, why don't you take us to the police station? They said, what police? And they started laughing, police. So I said, okay, we've got our driver. This is the car we are using. We'll go in our car. Then we'll drive behind you. The commandant says, I'm getting inside. I'll sit in front. The two of you will sit at the back and 2 other soldiers will sit with you, and we're going to the army headquarters. And then the other guys were behind them. And we drove to this direction and they took us to a bush somewhere. It was not the army headquarters. We said, where are you taking us? It was like a makeshift place where there were a lot of soldiers drinking, playing music and dancing. And this guy says to his friends, look what I've got. I brought my girlfriend. And they made us sit there and they ordered beer and they said, you guys pay. We didn't have much of the local currency. They said, no, pay, bring money, pay, dollar, pay. And they ordered these big pots of beer. And this guy said, his friends came, said, you are nani? And then this guy says, uyu, niwa mimi, this is my wife. And he put his hand around me. And the other guys were stoned. They were smoking. They were high. And we sat there and we said, look, you arrested us. Take us to the army headquarters. They said, yeah, we'll take you. There's still time. And the guy would drink from the bottle and then you'd give it to me and say, drink. And I said, I don't drink beer. He said, drink. Just drink. So Victor said, you have to cooperate. We don't know where we are.
Yeah.
Don't be cheeky. So a thought occurred based on my training. If anything happens, we have to escape from here. We don't know where we are. Yeah. We need money. These guys are going to strip us of our money. So I had, the usual pouch that you carry. So I said, let me go to the toilet, hide some of the money in my bras and maybe my underwear. So if we have to bribe our way out of here, we've got a bit of money. Because the guys said, they looked at Victor's watch and they said, take it off, bring it. Nice shoes. He had trainers. Take them off. To everything we had, they were stripping us off. They took my watch, Victor's necklace. They take it from you and put it on and say, déco bien, muzuri san. So I thought they got, so I said, can I use the toilet? And there was a little makeshift place there. So I went there and I started taking the money out of my pouch. And then this guy just comes and kicks the door open. Commandant, he's drunk and he's high and he says, you are mine. I want you here now. I screamed, no, you're not going to touch me. So Victor heard and he ran towards, he said, please, my brother, please, don't touch her, my brother. Please, I'm begging you, we'll give you all the money, everything. Don't touch her. Because he was trying to Let me.
Yeah.
And that's when it dawned on me that I can't be cheeky with these guys. And we said, how much do you want? We'll give you money. Please just take us to the army. Just now, Mandela is going to start phoning. They don't know where we are. They said, Mandela ni nani? They don't care, that fool,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say that, but that's what they were saying.
Yeah.
And so around 4:30 now, they arrested us around going to midday. Then they're drunk, we've given them dollars. And so they took us to the army head office, took us to the cell. You don't want to be in those cells. Could see that someone was murdered in there.
No.
Blood on the wall, feces on the floor. And they said, take off your shoes. I'm thinking, how am I going to stand on that stuff? Then I remember my father said to me, your notebook will save your life one day. Always carry it. So I remembered, I said, okay, let me tear out pages from my notebook and put it, because there was urine and everything on the floor. And I put it there and I stepped on it. And they closed us in that one little cell. It stunk. And there was a little window and we're saying, what's happening? And Victor said, that's it. Leave us to rot here. We don't know what's going on. So we stood there. They had taken our phones. They had taken the camera. They'd taken everything from us. And we just stood there. We didn't know what was going to happen. I'm thinking, Victor, do you pray? And he said, yeah. I said, let's pray. The only way out of here is by God. God's grace. So we prayed and we started, hello. We could hear voices in the distance. It was like a little unique cell in the middle of nowhere. And then after about 30, 40 minutes, we heard footsteps. They started walking towards us and we're saying, hello. They'd gone to call their boss now.
Okay.
Because they told them we've arrested some spies. Because the politics of that time, remember, this was a big war. It had drawn in different countries.
Yeah.
Zimbabwe, Namibia, and one or two other countries were on the side of Kabila. And then there was Uganda, Rwanda, and they were accusing South Africa of supporting the rebels. So we've arrested a so-called TV crew from South Africa. These are spies. So this guy comes and says to us in broken English, do you know the offense you've committed? I said, I don't know. He says, Pa. I said, what is that? He said, me, soldier, you, Pa.
We're going to kill you.
We're going to execute you. So I'm thinking, is he serious or is joking? He says, no, this is espionage. They took out papers. We had to write our names, our mothers, our parents' names, our grandparents' names, where we were born. Somehow my Zambian passport saved me that day. And I'll always be thankful for my Zambian passport. Because the accusation were, these are South African spies. They've been moving up and about. They committed treason, a treasonous act by filming soldiers. You're not allowed to do that, according to them, in the context of the war.
Yeah.
And they are South African. So I took out my passport. I said, I'm your sister. I'm Zambian. How can I spy on you? And they went on and no. They filled in this form and they said, sign it. I said, what? And it was in French. I said, I'm not signing this. I don't understand half the stuff of this. My French is okay, but I don't understand this. And they said, no, sign it. And I said, I'm not doing this. I need to understand it. And then the guy now who was there, the overall boss, tells the other two guys, step out. So the guy stepped out and he said, combien? Vous avez combien d'argent? It's like, how much money do you have? I said, nous avons beaucoup de dollars. Vous voulez dollars? We've got a lot of dollars. Of course we didn't. I said, oui, donnez-moi dollars, mais faites silence. Ne parlez pas. Give me the dollars and keep quiet. And then Victor said, we'll give you dollars, but give us back our camera. So there was a negotiation going on. So I took out $50. I gave him. He says, no, $50. Je ne suis pas enfant. I'm not a kid. So Victor took out 100. He says, donnez-moi dollars. Vous voulez papa? Essentially they just wanted money from us. So we gave them some money. They let us go. They said, one word from you, We've got your driver's license. We know where he stays. We're going to kill him, his wife, his children, his chickens, his cockroaches. Anything we'll find at his house, we'll kill. So you shut your mouth and get out. I've never run that fast. We ran out. We said, where's our car parked? All this while, our driver was seated outside the army barracks. Got into the car, went straight to our hotel. We were so tired. They'd been looking for us. I said, Victor, up on the roof, because that's where our satellite was. I called the office. I said, we're going. I told them this is what happened. It was going towards 19 hours. They said, you're going live. 19 hours, 3, 2, 1, cut. We were stinking. We were dirty. But we had to tell the story first. And they cut to us. We go live. Our team's been missing the whole day. What happened? That was the breaking news story. BBC picked it up. AllAfrica.com picked it up. It's a global news story.
Maureen, really quickly, did you after you finished covering the war and the things that you went through, did you suffer from any post-war?
Yes, I did. It happened after Sierra Leone. And I won't tell you the full details.
You went somewhere else?
I went to everywhere where there was war. I went to Sierra Leone.
Yeah.
And Sierra Leone, after that, even Zambian troops were killed. We met these troops and we were so happy because we'd gone to cover there was post-conflict stuff going on there. And we were so happy to meet the Zambian troop because we only had crisps and Fanta and biscuits to eat because it was war. They were eating dog, cat, human flesh. And so we had to be careful. So somewhere on one of the days, someone says, Maureen, it was a guy from the peacekeeping troops from the Zambia army. So we're so happy. We said, where do you guys get your food and so on and so forth? And they told us where. And then someone tipped us from among our sources. They said, you're not safe with any troops, whether they're UN or whatever. If the S hits the fan, you'll be caught in crossfire. And the rebels are approaching. So our office called us and they said, we've picked up intelligence that the rebels, Revolutionary United Front rebels of Fode Sanko, are approaching. You have to get out. We'd gone to a place called Makeni. You have to get out. And there was no flight there. So we had a driver. He drove us down, got to Monrovia. To Freetown. We needed to get out. There was only one flight leaving Freetown to Cote d'Ivoire. And it was once a week. And it was not traveling on that day. It was not flying out on that day. And our office said, get your backsides out of the air now. So someone said, there's a Russian plane going. You pay $30 when boarding the flight. And we had heavy gear. And I said, this time I had a different camera person who used to break down and cry all the time. And I was so hardened that time. Be like, get up, get the camera, let's go. Why are you crying? We came to war. I was just literally so hardened. I said, pick it up. And so we went and this plane had benches for chairs and curtains.
No seatbelt.
I don't know what was there. I can't remember. I remember it was very old Tupolev, a Russian plane. And I said, it's either we die with this plane crashing. It's 30 minutes to Conakry, Guinea, or we get caught by those. I don't know what will happen. So let's go. So we boarded that flight. We paid $30, 30 minutes into Conakry. They sort of had to wind the engine from the start, like
very old.
And I looked at Patrick, and his nose was red. I said, don't you dare cry here. Patrick, just pray. That was the camera person. Let's get into Conakry, then we'll do all the crying. So when we got to Conakry, we went into the office told us, if you've got money, check into a good hotel, have a good meal. We'd not eaten for days, proper food. And then they said, get the whatever out of there. From Conakry, we got onto flight to Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire, we boarded South African Airways to Johannesburg. When I got there, a few days later, tuned into BBC, 4 Zambian peacekeepers have been killed in Makeni. I was like, good gosh, we were with them. They would have killed us.
Yeah.
So my dad phoned me and said, never, ever should you go to war again. You've got young children. Yeah. Then I started having these dreams. I'm in a village and bombs are falling. Helicopter gunships are dropping bombs, and I'd wake up and I became sort of suicidal, and a lot of things happened to me. Yeah. And they decided I can't go to war anymore. I have to read the news. And I was totally bored.
Did you undergo any kind of therapy?
I did eventually, but I didn't want to. I sort of did a lot of self-healing.
Okay.
But I did have some counseling, and but it hits you later. It doesn't hit you right away.
Right
It was years later,
Ah.
actually, that it hit me fundamentally.
Maureen, I want us to speak about a different chapter of your life. BBC headhunted you and you got a job and you went to work in London?
Yes, I did.
Really quickly, what can you tell us about
It was very interesting. I mean, it's the biggest broadcaster in the world. I learned a lot about good journalism. I was presenting a program called Focus on Africa and producing it sometimes, a bit of traveling. London was a bit of a challenge for me.
Why?
I had a very comfortable lifestyle in South Africa, and SABC paid extremely well. So you'd get car, wardrobe allowance, and this, that, and the other. And London was okay, but London is an expensive place to be. And I was there with young children. My spouse then was not with me. It's very demanding job. So sometimes I'd report for work at 10 o'clock at night and only knock off around 10 the following day. And you'd be on air and so on. But it was very good grounding, very good experience.
And you did it for 7 years?
Yes. And
It's a long time.
Yeah. I mean, there were times when I'd got off, I went and had a baby and my second son and went back and so on. There were a few breaks in between, but it was very good, highly competitive. So you've got to earn your worth there. You've got to know your stuff. People don't do research for you. They don't write your scripts. They don't do the questions for you. You've got to have the networks, the contacts and so on. But then I decided I want to go back home. And I wanted to do something there. And then again, I got an offer from the United Nations Development Program. It was very timely. The context of the work that I was doing was to bring the story home. Why were these wars happening from an African perspective? Of course, we had the international media, CNN and others telling the story, which is okay. Most of it is accurate. But I had to bring the African perspective, but also the perspective as an African woman. What does this all mean? Why are women... We went to this displaced camp where it was just literally a camp for everyone whose limbs had been chopped off. Oh, no. And that's where the camera person couldn't bear it. And he put his camera down and broke down. And I said to him, pick it up and switch it on. It's not crying here. You cry when we get back to the hotel. Not because I was not sympathetic or empathetic, but I felt...
You needed to tell the story.
This story has to be
How do you tell the story without capturing?
Exactly. And people have said to me, why did you do it? I did it because first... coming out of my master's degree at university, my thesis was on the image of Africa in Western media, specifically BBC. And we had arguments with my international relations lecturer about, the perception of Africa, how that impacts on policy decisions and economy and so on. And I just felt so fired up about having to go there as a journalist from an African country who has seen poverty firsthand, but I've also seen development. Africa is not only about civil wars and conflict and poverty and suffering. Africa is rich in resource, in human resource, a mineral resource, in environmental resources, in our culture, in our tradition, in our history, and those stories ought to be told. But I found myself in these places. And of course, at that time when I went to these countries, there were several conflicts on the continent. And in addition to telling the story of war, I was also telling the story of development and socio-economic empowerment, what women were doing, what youth were doing, and the political transformation that was happening. So there was also a positive story to tell.
Very interesting. Now, Maureen, I know that on August 25th, 2022, I stand to be corrected, you signed a contract to be Director General of ZNBC.
Yeah, that's right. It was on the 24th of August. I was interviewed. I applied for the job. I was told I'd made it to the short list, and I was interviewed for the job. And I remember that day I'd come to Zambia for something. because I always come to Zambia. And then I was on my way to Sweden for a water conference. I was working for GWP, Global Water Partnership. And I got to the airport, OR Tambo Airport from Lusaka, and I got a call from ZNBC HR saying, where are you? I said, I've just arrived in South Africa. He said, congratulations. The board has communicated, you've got the job. When can you sign your contract? And I'm thinking, tomorrow I'm on a flight to Stockholm. So I phoned my boss, and my boss knew the whole process. I told him what was going on, and he said to me, this is of national pride. This is your country. Mm-hmm. Stockholm can wait, we'll represent you. Go and sign your contract. So I went home, changed my ticket, flew back to Lusaka, signed the contract, and I was given the offer letter. I looked at it and I thought, goodness, this is quite a drop from what I'm doing at the moment, but you know what? Who cares?
Yeah.
I was born at ZNBC. I would not have gone anywhere and done what I've done were it not for the opportunity I was given at ZNBC. This is my opportunity to give back. And I had a turnaround strategy, which I presented in that interview, which they probably liked. So we were waiting for the announcement so that I could start work on the 1st of September. And then all the social media starts going abuzz about PF Kada and she's got the job and this, that, and the other. And I'm calling the authorities and saying, tell me what's going on. And they said, no, don't worry. It'll be, the chairperson will announce and you can start work. And lo and behold, on the 31st of August, I get a message from ZNBC saying, where are you? I said, I'm at home. We're bringing a letter to you. And I'm thinking, okay, this is, good. And it was a letter saying we're withdrawing your appointment for whatever reason. And I thought, oh gosh, this is really interesting. Why would you do this to me? And they said, oh no, maybe they'll phone you. Why don't you call this one? And they tell you. I said, you know what, just stuff it. And the whole social media and everyone else it was a buzz talking about, they've withdrawn. There were people saying the appointment had been withdrawn even before I got the formal letter. Of course, there were people in the background who were against it. And I know them. Mm. And I know that people accused the Minister of Information at that time. She was not the one that did it. I can safely say she was not.
But why give you the job then if they didn't want you to get it?
Well, it's your guess is as good as mine. But there was a lot of pressure from various sectors, from individuals. Some had or were working for ZNBC. Some were from there were various issues around it. And you know what? I decided, okay, fine. It's okay. Mm. At least I tried. At least I got the job. That's all right. It's not worked. Let's leave it. And I got a call from my boss and said, well, we've seen what's going on. And we were happy. We were going to receive you in Stockholm for the meeting. The Minister of Water at that time was Honorable Mike Imposha and others. We're going to do a welcome party for you. We were so happy, but we're all devastated. But what are you doing now? I said, well, the chieftainess has called me. My chiefs have called me to Serenge just for a break. I think I'm heading down to Serenge. And they said, well, do you mind coming back to your job? I said, any minute. They said, well, your job's waiting for you. So I decided, okay, I'm too tired to travel to Serenge anyway. I got on the flight, went back to Joburg. They bought a ticket for me. They said, go and take a few days holiday in Maseru, go for a massage, just lie down in the mountainous areas, relax and come back to your job. And I went back to my job and topic closed.
Wow. Shocking. But so anyway, I remember that at some point your father opened a journalism school.
Yes, it
Were
was
you involved
actually,
at all?
no, I was in a way. It was actually managed by a person called Pastor Mwansa.
Okay.
And it invited my dad because my dad's had the journalistic experience. Yes. And my dad was, he was quite getting on with age and he was happy to help. It was called Norma Jean College.
Yes.
And I did assist in one way or the other, but at that time I was working for the BBC and I was quite remote and too busy, but yeah, definitely they trained a lot of journalists. I meet a lot of people who say, I studied at Norma Jean College and I was trained by your dad. And some were trained by my dad at Evelyn Horn College and so on and so forth. So I used to sort of help with some of the manuals and the modules for training and so on. Whenever I was around, you'd ask me to go to the college, but I was very, very busy in London most of the time. Whenever I came to Zambia, it was family first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Maureen, really quickly, let's speak about your current job. I know when I was speaking to my team, they were telling me, look, she's in and out of the country, and we need to catch her when she's around. What kind of work are you doing? Which organization?
After I left BBC, I went to the United Nations. From United Nations, I went to the African Union. From African Union, I came to Zambia briefly and did some work for the World Bank. It was at a very interesting time. Former President Sata had died. Zambia was transitioning. It was just before presidential by-elections, and I was quite strategic then into giving economic briefs to the presidential candidates, so sort of giving a general perspective of what was happening economy-wise from a World Bank perspective to presidential candidates, which we were hoping would feed into their manifesto, some communications. Then after that, I went back to the UN, African Union again. I worked for the African Union in Washington briefly. And then I decided, let me do some NGO work because I'm passionate about water. So it was time of COVID-19. So I then moved from Washington. When we came back from Washington, D.C., I joined the Water Aid. And I was in charge of communications for 6 countries in Southern Africa.
Oh, wow.
It was COVID, it was lockdown time, but I had to do a lot of work around behavior change, risk communication, and then did some work for the Global Water Partnership, which was also very interesting because I wanted to do less of community liaison, communication work, but more of international development work, which was what the Global Water Partnership offered. And then from there, I got an offer. There's an organization called the Organization of a Southern Cooperation. It's an intergovernmental organization seated in Addis Ababa. So Addis Ababa is the seat of Africa, as you know, but we also made it the seat of the Global South. Essentially, we've got member states from a number of Global South countries, and I deal with global communications. I've moved more from communications now into policy leadership work, which is around intergovernmental relations, international affairs, external relations. And because I had a very bad accident at home, freak accident, I broke my bones and so on and so forth.
Oh no, what happened?
I just slipped over water and hit my head and had a concussion and so on.
I'm sorry.
I had surgery in 2024. I decided I'd like to work from home. That's why I'm in and out of Zambia. I absolutely want to be in Lusaka. It's home. I've always come to Zambia. Wherever I was in the world, I made it a point at least 2 or 3 times a year I was in Zambia. It was always easier when I was in Johannesburg because I'd come here for weekends. So I do some work sometimes remotely from Zambia, but I get to travel a lot around the world in line with my work.
You've got quite a number of accolades to your name. You are awarded as Zambia's Media Ambassador, Best Presenter BBC Africa Service, appointed to the board of the Kasaka Trust. We'll speak about the book as well.
Yeah, some of that is not factually right.
Okay.
I was Best News Anchor at ZNBC for 4 years.
Okay.
89, 90, 91. No, 3 years.
Yeah.
And then the Press Association of Zambia News, so four awards, then Bob TV.
Yeah.
And then there have been other organizations that have been giving me awards. BBC, I was not the best because BBC don't run those kind of awards. But I've been awarded Media Ambassador, work for my work in media development, promoting journalism work and so on. So I've got several awards. And of course, the Diamond TV Lifetime Achievement Award and so on and so forth. Yeah. Kasanka, yes, I was a board member from 2021 until 2025. I had to step down because it required me to do a lot of work on the ground and I couldn't because of my global travels. I was also board chair of the media communications, what was it called? It's very interesting. Media communications, climate change, something.
Okay.
Something to do with climate change in media, because a lot of the work I do is around climate change.
Okay.
But you see, the thing is, I get so busy with my work because I'm in conferences and meetings and speaking on public stages and so on. So I decided I can't do some of this board work. And but I do, the one thing that I'm very passionate about is the little community work I do in my village in Serenje in Kanona. Some kind of a women empowerment.
You're still connected to Serenje, yeah?
I absolutely, I love Serenje. I went there when I was 2 months old. There's a saying, he who drank the waters of his land, or she who drank the waters of her land shall return. I drank that water from Kaombe River, which is a stream that goes across my village when I was a few months old. So I'm connected to that place. And I love rural life. If I were to be in a government position, for instance, I think my passion would be rural development, because I've traveled in the line with my work as well. A lot of the development work I do is we go to rural areas in many parts of the world, especially in Africa, but also rural Europe. And I see the potential. And I look at the potential that Zambia has if we invested a lot in rural development. The quality of life there, I can tell you, is better than life in Kwamisisi and all these other places, because those are informal structures. There's no proper sanitation and a lot of amenities that are needed. Whereas rural dwellings just need a little bit of upliftment and support. And that's where a lot of that development can happen.
Great. Before I come to my my final point, which is motherhood, marriage, and divorce, I want us to speak about your book. You've made references during the conversation about your book and the next book that you want to write. Your book, Tried and Tested, My First 50 Years. Briefly, without giving out too much information.
Yeah, it's essentially an autobiography about my life. So it captures the story of my life from when I was born, the things I went through, the accomplishments, the difficulties. It's a very candid book because it doesn't hold back on anything. Where I failed, I failed. Where I was an idiot, I talk about I was an idiot. Where I made poor decisions, bad judgment, because that's essentially what life is. It was a bestseller in Zambia 2017 and 2018. I'd written it actually initially so that my father could read it. But sadly he died because he was ailing and getting on with age. So he died a few months before I published it. So I went ahead and published it anyway. So I'm redoing it because there are a number of things that were left out and I felt I need to enrich it. Yes.
Okay. So you still giving it the same name?
It's the same title. It's just I'm enriching it. But there's a second book I'm working on as well.
Okay. Congratulations. So is it still available on sale?
It is, but I pulled it off Amazon Books and so on, and I want to relaunch it.
You want to relaunch it?
Do it properly, yes.
Great. Maureen, as we wind down, motherhood and your career, how did that change you? And then how did that impact your life, so to speak? Also, marriage and divorce? When did you get married? Did you get married to
motherhood for me is the best experience I've ever had. And also probably the most difficult in terms of my career, because I've had to juggle a very demanding career and be a mother and try to be a very good mother. I've got a daughter and I've got 2 sons from my first marriage. It didn't work because there were a lot of challenges. I've documented again in the book the domestic abuse and other things. I pulled out. It was very difficult, but I had to choose my career. I absolutely love my children, and everything that I do is because of my children. And I have molded them. Well, I don't know if it's right to say molded them, but I've raised them in such a way that the boys, for instance, they're young men now, are independent, they're politically astute, they're hyper intelligent. I mean, pick any subject, be it Iran conflict, anything. They will be able to analyze and have a good conversation. So I enjoy my discussions with my sons. My daughter's not very interested in politics. She now lives abroad with her husband. But they're fine children. It's not easy being a mother. And most of the time, even when I was married, it was more or less like a single mother. I would have to read their homework to them through the phone. Read stories to them through the phone, help them with their homework, manage things remotely while traveling. Not to say I was always traveling. Whenever I was there for them and tried to spend as much time as possible, valuable time with them. They cook. They're very responsible because they had to learn to be responsible. So my sons cook, do their laundry, they clean, they do everything. There's nothing my boys cannot cook. And I mean nothing. If it's cookable, they can cook it. If they don't know, they don't cook it. Yeah. My daughter got married. I'm very proud of her. She got married in 2015. Her husband is also Zambian from Choma, and they do their work abroad. I won't say, they don't like me to say a lot about where they are and what they do. And so I feel very fulfilled that I've raised these 3 children and others as well So I've had to be a mother to others, orphans and other children. Some lived with me, some I helped remotely. And under very, very difficult circumstances. I remember crying on the plane each time I had to travel because I hated it, but I had to do it. And I think, when will this stop?
Yeah.
And of course, now they're much older. I wish I had the time that I have now when they were younger.
When they were younger.
Like working remotely, because that would have been wonderful.
Yeah, Maureen, I wanted to ask a question, and I'm asking this respectfully, and we can speak about it if you're comfortable about it. There's a time I think you got married, and social media was buzzing. I think you got married to a colleague, I think, that you worked with in the embassy. I'm not pretty sure.
No, I didn't work with them in the embassy. I was working for the African Union in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
They were working for the Zambian embassy.
Oh, he was working
Washington. Yeah. Well, it was ugly only because people wanted to make it ugly.
Yeah, because I really didn't understand. I can't ask this question properly because I don't understand what the problem was.
Some few mischievous people who were feeling maybe envious and silly that we were getting married and they had been snubbed. They would have preferred that it were them. And so they ran this horrific story on social media about, me being a home wrecker. Listen to this. I've been in the limelight for 40 years.
Yeah.
1986 to today is 40. I've had all sorts of mud and excrement and cow dung and anything else you can think of thrown at me. And none of it breaks me. My children always sing, there's this hit song that came out, I think in Kenya some years ago, "You can't broke me because I'm unbreakable." So they thought that would then destroy me and tarnish. Every time my name is tarnished by people who do it strategically and deliberately because they want to malign me over political appointments or jobs or career or whatever, they take to social media and they rubbish my name. And so we got married and we were married for 6 years. I'd known him.
It was actually that long.
I'd known him many years prior.
He's a good man.
He
know him.
worked with my father at Norma Jean College. He was trained by my father and so on and so forth. He's been in the family. I have a lot of respect for him. We're not together. Things couldn't work, but we're still friends.
Yeah.
That's it.
Great. Maureen, I'm told you're running a women's cooperative back in Serenge?
Yes.
Can we just speak about that as we wind up?
It's the Kaombe. Well, I named it Kaombe because
it's the one you spoke about earlier.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So it's essentially just a little, and I have, they're these women, they're basically rural. They live on my land.
Yeah.
My father left us with land. It's ancestral land. It used to be my grandfather's and so on and so forth. I belong to two chiefs, Chief Milo, Chieftainess, or Chief Serenge. I'm from the royal family. And these are people who are there. They're family. So I try to help them from time to time. Menstrual health hygiene. It's very difficult in that area to find feminine towels. So there are little things that we've been doing to try and help them. I also just believe that when they are empowered, then their communities, their environments, their households will be much healthier. So it's a lot of things that are based on the development work that I've done in the United Nations and other organizations, but translating to a personal level where I just feel that it's important to empower these women. If their husbands go and work on a farm and earn maybe 50 kwacha, I'm speaking Lala now. The guy says, there's a fight at home. But if these women are selling little bits of fish and doing their own bits, they don't have to have fights with their spouses, who some may be irresponsible, some are responsible. They're quite empowered. So the basics of what they need is there. And so those are the kind of things that I do. And I wish I could do more of it, but my work always takes me away from that.
Well done. It's very good when, we don't forget where we come from, and also, just to help the community. It's something amazing. After this, where are you heading to with your life?
Yeah, I was saying earlier to your producers that I'm getting a lot of calls about politics in Zambia. And it's something that I've thought about, and I've thought about it seriously over the years.
Yeah.
I'd wanted to get into politics some years ago, and my mom and dad say, don't do it. Of course, based on the experiences they had, they were horrific. But they also know me well. I'm fearless. And they're scared. They were scared. They're both late. They were afraid of, they used to say, you are an unguided missile. We don't know where you will land. So you have to hold back. Stick to international development. It's diplomatic. You're restrained.
Yeah.
But I always get this urge to get involved
Yeah.
in one way or the other. Serenja is calling every day. Come and stand as MP. I'm thinking about it. I can't rule it out completely. But I always think, why did my parents stop me from it? They said it would be down and dirty. They'll drag you into the mud. You don't want that. But there's important work to be done in this country. We're at that juncture where women need to come to the forefront and participate in politics, not for the sake of it, but because as people who mother from the point of conception until someone's an adult and they're married off, and you still continue being a mother until you die. I think we look at life from a different perspective. And I look at a lot of things that I've done in my career. And I think if I've done this and done it successfully, how would that be translated back home? Would it be through a member of parliament? Would it be through an advisory role? Would it be as a technocrat? I don't like to use the word technocrat, but I'm looking at all those different options.
It's really good because even the president has been, advocating for, more women representation. In this
I believe
position.
in meritocracy. It should be on merit. We don't want dunderheads, and not to say women are dunderheads, but you get a lot of men who are dunderheads in parliament these days, and I'm sorry to use that phrase, but it's factual. It should be on merit. This nonsense of bottom power and who does this, that, and the other should not be what is happening in Zambia today. The world's developing rapidly. We're in the information age. We are now in the artificial intelligence age. And so we need women who are sharp. They may not be educated, but they understand development and they have a passion for what they want to do. Very quickly, when I was young, one of my hobbies, and I always got whacked for it, was climbing trees. And I always played with the boys because I just found them more challenging. And we'd walk around. Those days we didn't play indoors. We'd walk around with the guys and I would see a tree and I would say to the guys, can you race me up that tree? And I always wanted to get to the top of the tree and then look down. And I always got to the top of the tree. I had scars on my legs from the scratches and tore my clothes. And my mom would say, Kodi mwana uyo alibwanji? Because she was Tumuka. Sometimes she'd speak Nyanja and she'd spank. Usaka bwezepo foot. The next day I'd be climbing up the tree. I got a thrill of going up that tree. When I look at my life today, I've climbed trees. I like to be on top. And if I'm going to get into politics, I'm not just doing it for the sake of it. One day I want to get up that tree. Why not?
When we talk about the tree, are we talking about the presidency?
Yes. Which other tree would...
Just wanted to be sure. A member of parliament is a tree, but I think
the
tallest one is the presidency.
You see, I believe in what's worth doing is worth doing well. I've done that with everything I've done, from journalism, broadcast journalism, international development, communications, advocacy. I've done it well.
Yeah.
So if I so happen to say, yes, now I'm going into politics, I've got to do it well. Even if I was a councillor, the results should show.
For sure.
But I'm not going to sit there and be a councillor for the next God knows how many years. I'm going to be climbing. I'm ambitious.
You're very ambitious, yes.
You can count on me.
Maureen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Along the way, when we took a break, you're asking me if you're explaining too much. Like, I'm happy to have a guest that actually explains, because then it allows me to follow, but also it doesn't put me under pressure. Because sometimes you have 10 questions, and then if you have a guest who's answering one-word answers, in the first 5 minutes, the 10 questions are gone.
They're done, yes. No, I've been through that a lot, having interviewed people. I'm really delighted to have had this opportunity, and I want to say congratulations to you and your team. You're doing brilliant work. I watch some of your podcasts and I'm very proud of what you've done. I'm very proud of what you young people are doing in media. I'm very passionate about media development. That's a subject for another day.
Yeah.
I've got a media institute, by the way, called the FM Nkandu Media Institute, named after my dad.
FM?
Faxon Mishek Nkandu.
Okay.
And at the moment, because I'm all over the place, I do it remotely. I do offer free courses for Zambian participants from time to time. Others outside the country I charge. I do them remotely, but sometimes I run them within Zambia when I have a bit of time. But I want that to gravitate into a big institute. People have said to me, oh, why don't you form a radio station and a TV station? My point is, form what? And then employ mediocrity? No. Train them well and then feed them into the different broadcasting stations or newspapers or print media or digital media, wherever it is they choose to go.
Maureen, I'd like to thank you so much. But what we do on this podcast is each guest that comes on the show leaves a question for the next guest. I'll give you an opportunity also to ask any kind of question to the next guest. We don't even know who our next guest is.
Yeah.
The question that was left for you by Peterson, the musician, it reads, what do you think was the most defining moment that happened in your life that got you where you are today? In 60 seconds.
The most defining moment was when I had my children, because it gave me a much stronger purpose for me to work hard, to teach them from my experiences, and to empower them and to nurture them well. And the drive to provide for them a comfortable life, to empower them and educate them and mentor them and be there for them, got me to where I am today.
Wow. What is your question to our next guest?
Yeah, it's a very simple question. If there was one thing you could change in Zambia, if you were given the opportunity to change just one thing, what would that be? Based on your career, your experience, or your passion?
Great. This has been the Kenny T One-on-One podcast, brought to you by Yatu Tea. My name is Kenny T. I'm back again next week, same place, same space.